Yes, my hair is getting crazier with each new video. Such is the nature of self-quarantine. Hi, I'm KP with Coronavirus Diaries, a channel dedicated to the documentation of a world under lockdown, and today's video is going to be a little different from the rest and possibly a little controversial. I don't think so, but some people might. And if you notice my eyes wandering, yes, I am reading this because it's about a 1,600-word essay I just wrote, and I'm not about to try to memorize it. And I'm going to do this all in one take, so if I stutter a little, sorry. In the immortal words of Billy Joel, we're only human. Normally we like to discuss how COVID-19 and self-quarantine has affected people in various parts of the world, but my last video regarding why there are so many opposing headlines in the news got me thinking. So this is going to be more of a big picture type video, mainly about this phenomenon that tends to happen whenever there is a crisis in the world with a scientific explanation, or a new scientific theory is introduced that rubs some people the wrong way in a philosophical, political, or religious sense. They shut out the evidence, find ways to dispute it, and say they don't believe in science, which doesn't make any sense, but we'll get to that. This is happening right now during the current pandemic. It happened when climate change was the major issue. It happened during Brown versus the school board regarding the teaching of evolution in science class, and you can even go as far back as Copernicus to see that this religion versus science thing is nothing new. And it all stems from a misunderstanding of what science is, and therefore a misunderstanding as to what religion or philosophy is. Now I'm going to go kind of deep here, and my own bias will be prevalent in this one, so if you take issue, by all means let me know in the comments below and let's have a discussion. You see, unlike religion and philosophy, science is not a belief system that relies on your faith. It is a method of observation and experimentation that is based on doubt. And I'm going to expand on that in a minute, but first, think about how each of these disciplines approach their explanations. In other words, even though you may see all three of them tackling all these big questions of the universe and coming up with what seems like similar, differing, or even opposing answers to one another, it's not really the different answers that are what's important, but rather the fact that they are each asking different questions about the same event or phenomenon. Philosophy deals with the big question of why. Why does the universe exist? Why are we here? Religion asks why and who, as in why does the universe exist and who is behind it all? And generally that who is who you worship. Science, on the other hand, asks the question how. How does it work? How did the universe come to be? How did we end up the way we are? So of course you're going to have a mixture of different answers because the nature of the questions themselves are different from one another. Science is only concerned with the mechanics behind the forces of the observable, testable, natural realm. It doesn't concern itself with why or who. They leave that to the studies of the unobservable, untestable, supernatural realm. Religion, spirituality, and philosophy. Let me give you an example of this using a simple analogy. Say I punched someone in the face and they ask me why I did it. And I answer, I pulled my fist back and then launched it at a high velocity into your face. And they say, no, I asked you why you did it. And I say, oh yeah, some synapses fired in my brain that told my arm to pull back my fist and launch it at a high velocity into your face. See how I'm not really answering the question? That's because I'm answering how I did it, not why. Why would be because I'm angry or violent or drunk or abusive. It deals with a conscious motivation or reason behind the action. Both answers are regarding the same event, a punch to the face, but they are answering two different questions about that event, and therefore you get two different answers. To use a more scientific example, a long time ago people believed the Earth was flat, that it was the center of the universe, and that the sun revolved around it. Even a small segment of the current population believes this, which boggles my mind, but I digress. That was regarded as truth for a long time until it was proved that the Earth is not the center of the universe, and it merely looks like the sun goes around us every day from our perspective, when it's actually because we're on a spherical Earth that's rotating. And this was revolutionary theory for a long time, and many people, including Galileo, were punished by the Catholic Church for teaching it because they believed that it went against the Bible's teachings, even though it doesn't. Let me use another example. Religion says a higher power created the universe, while science says it was the Big Bang, or emergent theory based on a higher dimension in the multiverse, or any number of explanations that get bounced around and examined until there's a consensus. Religion says we were created, but doesn't go into any kind of detail as to how it happened. If you read any religious story, the god or gods always do things through a process, and it always takes time. An example of this that I assume most of you know would be Moses guiding the Israelites out of Egypt to the Promised Land. Did God just snap his fingers and they were out? No, there was a long process that brought that about, and they even had to wander 40 years in the desert before they got there. So why would it be any different when it comes to the creation of the universe or humans developing the way we did? And none of these prove or disprove the existence or non-existence of the other. Now, if you're a fundamentalist, then fine. Everything happened in 6 days. But how long is a day to an eternal being? Our days are measured by the rotation of the earth. Perhaps God's days are measured in the rotation of the entire universe? Anyway, let's get back on topic. Now, obviously, I'm not a fundamentalist, and for those of you who are, I don't know what to tell you. That doesn't mean I'm not religious. It just means that in order to remain religious, there has to be some leeway to allow for observable truths in order for it to walk hand in hand with what science clearly shows us. It's like comparing apples to oranges. We use that phrase a lot to convey the idea that two things are so different that they can't be compared with one another. But also implicit in that statement, and an often forgotten piece of it, is the fact that apples and oranges are not opposed to each other. They're just different. Now let's get back to something I said earlier in this video, that science is not a belief system that requires your faith, but rather a method based on doubt. This is its primary strength, to examine various reasons for something, use a process of elimination to toss out the answers that don't make sense, and then go forward with the ones that make the most sense after a lot of experimentation, observation, tests that end in failure, tests that end in success, and peer review. The scientific method starts with a concept, which is an observation and description of a phenomenon. Then it moves to formulating a hypothesis, which is a proposed explanation for how something works. It then tests that hypothesis in various experiments, drawing conclusions from those experiments and perhaps refining the hypothesis to do it all over again. And once conclusive results begin to emerge, the findings are shared in scientific periodicals so that other scientists can test it as well. That last part is called peer review, and it's one of the most important parts of the scientific method, because even if a scientist does have an agenda or wants something to fit his or her narrative of how the universe works, you have all these other scientists from all other walks of life and all kinds of backgrounds that can test it as well. If everyone or almost everyone comes to a consensus, then a scientific theory is established. By the way, don't let the word theory mislead you. That's another misconception about science, that the word theory is just an educated guess. No, it's an agreed upon, repeatedly tested result. The reason they use the word theory is because the inherent nature of science is fluid, and an established theory can be refuted if someone is brilliant enough. Just ask Albert Einstein when he introduced general and special relativity, Stephen Hawking when he studied singularities, or when quantum physics emerged and broke every law of Newtonian physics, when they discovered that matter on the atomic scale does not follow the same rules of large bodies. Anyway, I hope you learned something from this. If you have anything to say, please drop it in the comments below, and please subscribe to our channel so we can keep it going. We enjoy reporting the news and sharing some of the crazy things that are happening in the world right now. Stay safe out there, and God bless. This is KP signing off.